Hello, good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you who are joining us here in person and online. I'm Shuka Badayan, an environmental correspondent and a documentary maker, and I am thrilled to serve as your host and session chair for this event. Today, we'll delve into the outcomes of COP28 and we discuss why we must accelerate our transition faster than the international consensus. And additionally, we'll explore the roles of businesses, policymakers, academics, and activists in the green transition here in the UK. And now, I am thrilled to introduce our video address by the former US Vice President, the founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project, Al Gore.
Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to join in welcoming all of you to this important gathering. And let me start by simply applauding the tremendous partnership between Climate Reality Europe, University College London, and the Climate Cafe for coming together to organize today's event. Together, all of us have just lived through the hottest year in recorded history here on Earth, a year that many scientists believe was the hottest year in 100,000 years and probably much more than that. We've experienced the destructive fires and smoke, the devastating floods and landslides, the widespread droughts, the melting ice and sea level rise, the much stronger storms that have caused so much damage, and many other horrific impacts caused by humanity's collective failure thus far to tackle the climate crisis with the urgency it obviously demands. We know what we've got to do. We need to stop using the sky as if it were an open sewer. We have to rapidly phase out the use of fossil fuels as quickly as possible and move then to replace them as quickly as possible with the clean energy solutions that are fully available to us today. The electricity is cheaper in almost the entire world. It doesn't have the co-pollution that kills many millions of people each year with the lung problems. It creates 3 times as many jobs per dollar spent or per pound spent compared to money put into the old dirty poisonous fossil fuel complex. Many of you know full well world leaders meeting at COP28 finally, after 30 years and 28 of these conferences of the parties, finally agreed to transition away from fossil fuels. And that's important. However, that agreement is simply the bare minimum required, and unfortunately it's filled with loopholes, and what happens next will determine whether it's truly meaningful or not. If we want to see the strongest outcome from COP28, then it's up to all of us to hold our leaders accountable to their pledges. It's up to the policymakers, the businesses, and most of all, the people like you gathered here today to dramatically shift the global energy transition into overdrive and get busy building a healthy and sustainable future that we can be proud to pass on to the next generation. They deserve it. And it goes without saying that this is a big job and it's going to require more than simply words and conversations. It's going to require real action from all of us, from everyone. Now, luckily, we do have all the solutions we need. They're available to us right now, cheaper and better, and we've got proven deployment models, and we've got, in other words, everything we need to rapidly cut greenhouse gas pollution in this decade. We don't need to wait. We can act now. And the good news is, if we do, the science tells us that once we reach true net zero, global temperatures will stop going up almost immediately with a lag of as little as 3 to 5 years. And even more exciting, if we stay at true net zero, half of all of the human-caused greenhouse gas pollution will have fallen out of the atmosphere in as little as 25 to 30 years, and the long, slow healing process can get underway. And that all gives me a tremendous amount of hope, and it fuels my drive to continue pushing for action. but we've got to act, and I hope you feel the same way. And I'll simply close, as I often do, by saying that if you ever doubt that we have the political will necessary to solve this crisis, please remember always, political will is itself a renewable resource. Let's get busy renewing it today. Thank you.
Wow, following that inspiring message from our founder and chairman, Mr. Gore. Now, it is my privilege to welcome someone who is at the forefront of climate action here in the UK, Varsha Jones, the coordinator of the Climate Reality UK.
Hi everyone. On behalf of Climate Reality Europe Team UK, welcome to today's event, endearingly called Love Your Planet, this Valentine's Day. Our community of almost 600 climate reality leaders in the UK all have one thing in common: training by Mr. Gore himself that equips us to galvanise people in our communities to take action for climate change. We're from all different walks of life, but as a collective have the same underlying discontent at the inadequate commitment from our leaders to rapidly transition to net zero, as I think we all probably do in this room. But together, I think we can make a difference. Last year, Climate Reality announced 4 clear global campaigns in order to achieve this. And we're guided by these in all the work that we do. Reducing emissions. There's no secret to how we stop global warming. We stop burning fossil fuels. And calling out greenwashing. Fossil fuel interests are simply not trustworthy partners in our common future. We want the truth in advertising and an end to fossil fuel subsidies. And I'll give you a quick example of calling out greenwashing now. The Advertising Standards Agency recently upheld a complaint that an ad by Equinor, the company behind the controversial Rosebank oil field, was misleading. They overstated the proportion of their business that comprises renewable energy. Strengthening international cooperation on climate. Our global community must work together to honour their commitments to reach net zero. We need leadership that is laser focused on getting there. And finally, financing a just transition. Yes, last year, the world's renewable capacity grew at record pace, which keeps us at the agreed target of tripling renewables by 2030. But our global leaders must work hard to honour these financial commitments. But what's really important is that they must simply fix their broken promises and empty words to deliver fair credit to developing countries as well as developing and delivering this thriving renewable energy sector. And today, you'll hear from a myriad of people driving these changes, including no less than 6 climate reality leaders who will hopefully inspire you and inform your new day-to-day business decisions. Because this direction, or this change of direction, is needed at every level, locally, nationally, and globally, to create a radically different world. Never has it been more important to harness our areas of influence and roll up our sleeves and accelerate this green transition. Now, at this point, I could tell you how Climate Reality Team UK were lucky enough to meet Al Gore at COP26 in Glasgow, or how at the COP27 event, the forum covered climate justice and energy transition and building green communities, and an intergenerational workshop between the U3A and the University of Warwick, who have all joined us here today, about how to talk about climate change. But I'd like to share a short and sweet example of the message that I keep banging on about, which is harnessing our areas of influence. And I might add, it's partly because I need help from any policymakers in the audience to take it to the next level. So yeah, find me in the break if there's anyone out there that can help. 2 years ago, I made an unexpected trip to the Isles of Scilly. I couldn't quite believe the natural beauty that welcomed me. Turquoise sea, white sandy beaches, and palm trees. And by the time I'd left, I'd seen puffins, I'd walked along my local beach each day, and I'd been island hopping. And on return to my desk, as I glanced back to bid them farewell, I realised they were totally flat. And my climate reality training rang in my ears. Warnings of warming oceans causing harsher storms, and images of coastal flooding flashed through my mind. So when I got back to my desk, I was propelled by the fear of losing these islands, which had become very special to me in this short space of time, to write an email to the Isles of Scilly Council. And I was convinced that I'd be ignored, but to my amazement, a councillor and the head of environment agreed to meet me on Zoom. Now, I discovered that their resilience to the challenges that they face is being tested more and more each year. And I started an islands project. And somehow I'll get that seen and heard. I'm just not sure how. But this is just to illustrate that climate change simply isn't far away by time or distance. Our world needs to operate with radical honesty. And with actions of communities of determined people pulling together, this clarity that is desperately needed can and will filter through until it can't be ignored. And only then will this unthinkable trajectory change course. We must all learn to lead, or to create a good life that doesn't destroy, but a good life that builds and protects the future. So whether it's a cup of tea and a chat with a neighbour, connecting with a local councillor, or joining a march with your local climate organisation, everything is relevant. Listen to your communities and their relationship with nature and their environment, and step into that space that you might not normally do, and create action that you never thought possible. Just hold on to what you know, because that's when things happen, and I urge you to give it a go. Thank you.
And now it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Geraint Rees, Vice Provost for Research, Innovation and Global Engagement at UCL.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure to be here today to welcome you to this really important conference. I'm incredibly proud of my colleagues and the alumni at UCL who are going to participate, all of you for coming this bright and early to hear these introductory talks. So what am I going to say from my perspective? Now, my responsibilities are for the research and innovation portfolio at UCL. And so seen through that lens, I think it's really important that our speakers so far have all mentioned the vital importance of action. But I'm going to suggest to you that action that is uninformed by research is not going to be effective action. And we all want that action to be as effective as possible. Of course, there are all things we can do individually and collectively in our lives to address climate crisis. But I'm going to suggest to you that it's research that has both defined the challenge, and it is research that will start to show the way out of the challenge. And it's a very particular challenge if we think about it, because the type of research that's required is across many, 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 many different areas. So it's not like a global challenge like, say, COVID, which the world's gone through, where there were many challenges there and many researchers showing the way out. But fundamentally, an awful lot of it was about epidemiology and then the spike protein and finding a vaccine. Whereas if we think about climate crisis, it's not only the modeling of weather systems and how they change, biodiversity and the effects of that, social change and the social sciences, and how we make unprecedented societal changes at an individual and collective level across the planet at the same time, in a way that's never been attempted or even undertaken before in human history. And you can go on and on and on. And even if you don't believe that creating a device that will suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere is the way forward, I don't personally believe that myself, but some people do, it is also the case that engineering solutions and mitigations and all of those things, the research that we do is going to help us show the way out, and it's going to help us monitor the progress, and it's going to help us think about the actions not today, but tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Because, of course, the solution to the climate crisis is not going to come in an instant. It's going to come over many years. So when I think about it through that particular lens, I also think about the particular place of our university, and indeed any university in that. So UCL is not the only university, and universities aren't the only players in this complex ecosystem. But I think we have a particular responsibility here at UCL. That in part comes from our location in a global city, in one of the densest urban environments in the world. And as you know, urban environments are what the world is turning to at the moment in terms of where people live. And so those solutions are going to have to work not just in London, but in global cities across the world. It's a particular responsibility for us because of our size. We're the biggest on-site university in the UK, but we're also the most global. There are more publications with a co-author from UCL from another country in the top G7 economies than any other university in the UK. So we're networked, and we can do that. We have significant research capacity, £2.96 billion of research funding to spend. What if a proportion of that, a bigger proportion of that, gets diverted through action to work on the climate crisis? And we're innovating as well. 2.85 billion of inward investment in startups and spin-outs. Some companies, of course, are accountable for some of the aspects of climate crisis, but other companies are going to be at the root of innovative solutions, whether they're for-profit companies, social enterprises, or the myriad other ways we can translate innovation out into the world. And finally, UCL has a particular responsibility because we're not just a scientific and technical university. We are an arts and sciences university that spans almost all the disciplines. Not all the disciplines, we don't yet have a dance academy, and we don't do much work in aeronautics, for example, but we do have all of those disciplines. And going back to my point about research, it's not just about doing research in climatology and biodiversity and engineering solutions and social sciences and economics and so on. It's also about how to join those areas up. And we can help join those areas up at UCL because we're in close proximity to each other, we see each other every day, we're in the same location, and we're globally connected. So those are some of the reasons that I think UCL, whether you're a student, whether you're a member of staff, whether you're an alumnus, whether you're a partner, has a special responsibility to help catalyze climate action and address the climate crisis. And then in closing, you're going to hear a lot from my colleagues, from others, about some of those actions, and you're going to discuss and debate those. But just two of the ways we think about it, about what we can practically do: connect and engage. So we're connecting people through the grand challenges. We've been running grand challenges for 15 years, but we think climate crisis is so important that it was the first grand challenge that we have evolved. The grand challenges connect not just our research, but are now going to connect our research to our pedagogy, our education, and connect that to our operations. So we walk the walk, as it were, in terms of our own operations, as well as talk the talk, but also see our amazing staff and students and campus as a living testbed for what we could achieve in terms of action on climate crisis. Because we are 16,000 staff and 51,000 students. That's a lot of people who can all take action individually and collectively if we get it right. And then finally, we're engaging. This is a marker of engagement. Our presence here is a marker of how important it is to UCL's senior leadership, and you'll hear shortly from our president and provost. But it's also about engagement at COP. as you know, because this is talking about that. It's about the fact we've been to the last 3 COPs, and that's an important place for us to both show what we're doing to the world, but also talk and hear and listen to other people and their lived experiences and their innovations and their actions. Because it's only at the end of the day, through that kind of communication and the research that I'm highlighting, that we're going to get successful action that makes a difference to climate crisis and to the people we live with on the planet we live on. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insights with us. Geraint's leadership in driving impactful initiatives here at UCL is inspiring. Now I'm delighted to welcome Michael Spence, the President and Provost of UCL, for more opening remarks.
Thanks very much. Well, thank you very much. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here today to University College London. I'm impressed that we've got this far and nobody who's spoken so far has yet mentioned the fact that it's Valentine's Day, and presumably that's because it's a holiday about which people, myself included, have at best ambivalent feelings. Perhaps even more controversially, it's also Ash Wednesday in the Christian tradition. It's a time for self-reflection and repentance. And that seems to me to be particularly appropriate for today, because today is about self-reflection and thinking about how we need to change. The academic at Yale, Daniel Markovits, has done work on the intellectual history of the notion of growth. And it was about the time that UCL was founded, that time when human beings became the measure of all things, or as they would have put it then, man became the measure of all things, that the concept of unbridled consumption, of unbridled economic growth, was not only fetishized, but also became, for the first time, a part of the intellectual furniture of European thinking. And we know that that shift from that bewitching Jewish story of Eden, where creation is a gift and the relationship that's required of us is one of custodianship, to one of conquest and growth and consumption, has brought us to a position where we're all going to fry. And so it is appropriate that today we self-reflect and that we think across our activities, across the activities of our community, how we turn from a relationship with nature in which our primary efforts are extractive to a relationship where our primary activities are custodial in one way or another. That is radical rethinking. And for UCL, founded as a part of that great Enlightenment moment for which there was so much good and about which there was so much good, for UCL, we need to think about what it means for us to reconceive communities in ways that are custodial and not extractive. That's a radical intellectual task. I looked yesterday at some very depressing figures. The percentage of companies in this country that actually have a climate action plan. It's kind of depressingly small. But then the percentage of companies that have a climate action plan and have had one for 5 years and have achieved in 5 years what they set out to achieve in 5 years is depressingly even smaller. And once you do the multiplication, it's easy to think that we're saying the right thing and yet not doing enough self-reflection, not doing enough repenting about doing the right thing. And that puts a burden on me. UCL is an institution that has an annual turnover of about £2 billion. We are a major player in London. We're an important employer. That's great. We have an impact through our research on the world. We have an impact on our education and the lives of so many thousands of people and the communities that they serve. But we're also a great consumer of natural resources. And so for us as an institution, Geraint has already talked about the ways in which we're encouraging others to think about what they need to do in the space of climate action. But we're also, as a part of our Grand Challenges process, turning that thinking in on ourselves and saying, what does it mean for UCL to be a custodial and not an extractive institution? What does it mean for us to build a future for our children and for the planet? And so it is a very great privilege to welcome you here today to UCL, to welcome you here today on this funny day, which is both Valentine's Day and Ash Wednesday, for a bit of self-reflection, a bit of challenge, and a bit of renewed commitment to doing things differently. Thank you very much.